The Dinaric Alps form a massive limestone spine running from Italy through Slovenia and Croatia down into Bosnia. Above ground, it is a landscape of sharp gray peaks and deep forests. For centuries, local farmers working the valleys would find strange pale shapes washed out onto their fields after heavy rains. They had ruffled red gills at the throat and translucent skin that flushed pink in the daylight. The villagers believed they were baby dragons, flushed up from some deeper world hiding beneath the soil. They were entirely correct about the deeper world. Beneath the karst hills, rivers vanish into sinkholes and run through hundreds of miles of caves, layered like a drowned cathedral in water that has not seen the sun in 10,000 years. In the cold, dark water of those chambers lives Proteus anguinus, the olm. It is the only cave-dwelling vertebrate in Europe. The mythological folklore masks a biological reality that is actually much stranger. The olm is an animal engineered perfectly to survive in a lightless environment where seasons do not exist and time barely moves at all. For most amphibians, growing up is a heavy physical toll. A tadpole loses its tail, absorbs its gills, opens its lungs to the air, and climbs out of the water. The olm refuses to undergo this transition. It hatches with feathery external gills and a thin film of skin sealing its eyes, and it keeps them. Biologists call this process neoteny. The creature deliberately retains its juvenile traits forever. In nearly every biological metric that matters, the body an olm lives in at age 100 is identical to the body it had at age 1. It survives not by advancing aggressively into a mature adult form, but by freezing its own biological development in place. Living in a submerged cave system presents an immediate functional problem. With its eyes sealed beneath its skin, an animal must find a way to hunt and navigate in absolute permanent blackness. The olm solves this by mapping its surroundings through alternative means. Its pale skin is highly porous and laced with specialized sensors that detect the smallest movements in the water, much like a human fingertip can feel a sudden breath of air. Inside its skull, an acutely tuned inner ear picks up microscopic vibrations from tiny prey buried in the thick cave silt. And researchers are exploring evidence that the olm can read the Earth's magnetic field, allowing it to maintain an internal north even a kilometer underground. It moves through the cold water at a steady, unhurried glide. There is no frantic searching and no wasted energy. In a void completely devoid of light, sound, or a visible horizon, the olm acts as its own compass, perfectly synchronized with the quiet hum of the planet. We only recently discovered how effectively this strategy preserves the animal. Starting in 1952, scientists in a subterranean laboratory in Moulis, France, began a careful, quiet experiment. They bred a captive population of olms and meticulously recorded every single birth and death for over 50 years. This chart plots lifespan against body weight for typical amphibians. Notice where the olm sits, completely off scale. Captive average lifespan was 69 years for a strawberry-sized animal. Based on survival curves, maximum projected lifespan pushes past 102 years, outliving average humans. It achieves this lifespan without relying on the biological mechanisms scientists usually see. It doesn't run an unusually cold body temperature, and its heartbeat isn't abnormally slow. By every standard metric of biology, an amphibian of this size should burn out in 15 or 20 years. Charles Darwin had theorized about this exact phenomenon when observing cave-dwelling animals. He suggested that removing a creature from the violent pressures of surface predators and seasonal extremes might allow it to simply keep living. The olm is living proof of that idea. By retreating into a stable, cold pocket of the Earth, it escaped both its predators and the normal rules of biological decay. But the wild caves are not a paradise. Food is incredibly scarce. A snail or a few small crustaceans might wash in with a flood, but long stretches of time pass where absolutely nothing edible arrives. To survive, the olm drops its metabolism to almost zero. It stops moving, its breathing slows, and it begins to safely draw down its own tissue, like a ship marooned in a long calm, slowly burning its own woodwork to keep the stoves lit. Published tracking records in Slovenia show an adult olm can survive in this state for up to 10 consecutive years without a single meal. When food finally does wash in, the animal eats and recovers completely, suffering zero organ damage from a decade of starvation. The instructions for this starvation resistance and its ability to heal without scarring are locked inside a massive genome that is 15 times longer than a human's. This genetic code is an unbroken chain of patient survival. Around 110 million years ago, tens of millions of years before the Tyrannosaurus rex even existed, an ancestor of the olm slipped into a crack in the limestone, and it never came back up. But the extreme slowness that allowed the olm to outlast the ice ages is now its greatest vulnerability. It is one of the slowest reproducing vertebrates on Earth. A female does not reach sexual maturity until she is 12 years old. After that, she lays a small clutch of eggs only once every 6 to 10 years. The environment adds to the danger. Karst limestone is highly porous. It lacks a slow, dense layer of soil to filter what falls onto the surface. Everything drops directly into the water table. Today, agricultural fertilizers, leaking petrol from mountain roads, and untreated wastewater from towns above drop rapidly and unfiltered into the exact chambers where the olms live. Once a toxin enters the cave, it stays there. And because the olm has thin, completely permeable skin, it absorbs whatever the water carries straight into its body. A century of careful biological patience offers absolutely zero defense against a single rainy afternoon of chemical runoff. This animal survived the shifting of the continents, it survived the freezing of the globe, and it survived empires rising and falling on the surface above its head. Because a local population breeds so rarely and barely moves from its birth chamber, it cannot simply migrate away or wait out a modern ecological collapse. Once a chamber is poisoned, the population vanishes. When visitors stand in a Slovenian show cave and watch a pale shape drift past the glass of a dark pool, the room usually goes quiet. People recognize that they are looking at a living clock, and that the clock is older than anything else in the room. The olm sits in the dark and poses a quiet question to humanity. It asks what it means to truly last, and whether a creature built purely to outlast deep geological time can survive the frantic, careless speed of a single human lifetime.